The year was 480 BC. A shadow crept from the east. It was vast and menacing. This shadow was the Persian Empire. At its head stood Xerxes, the king of kings. His ambition knew no bounds. His gaze was fixed upon the small, fractured city-states of Greece. He saw them as stepping stones to a world under his singular divine rule. His power was immense, drawn from lands that stretched from India to Egypt. Xerxes meant to avenge his father Darius's defeat at Marathon. He would not just conquer Greece, he would obliterate its defiance. To this end, Xerxes assembled a force of unprecedented scale, an army of nations numbering in the hundreds of thousands. Their march was relentless. City after city in their path either submitted or was crushed. The news of his advance spread like wildfire through Greece. Could the fractious Greeks unite against this common existential threat? In the Peloponnese, in the austere city-state of Sparta, the news was received. It was weighed and measured. Spartans were men of few words, men of action. They listened to the tales of Persian numbers. They heard of cities falling, of Greek courage wavering. Other Hellenes spoke of appeasement, of finding terms with the great king. Such words found no purchase in the hard soil of Lacedaemon. Spartans did not bow. King Leonidas listened. He was a Spartan king of the Aegead house, a direct descendant of Heracles. He was not a young man. He had seen war and understood its brutal calculus. He knew what Xerxes represented, the end of freedom, the end of the Spartan way of life. He looked to the Ephors, the council of elders. He consulted the oracle at Delphi. The omens were grim. Sacrifice was demanded. The oracle's prophecy was stark. Either Sparta would be destroyed, or a Spartan king must die. Leonidas heard these words and did not flinch. For a Spartan, duty was paramount. Duty to Sparta, to the gods, to uphold the law. Leonidas embodied this law. He knew his path. If a king's death would save Sparta, then a king would die. He would not lead Sparta to surrender. He would lead them to honor. He would meet the Persians and show them what it meant to face free men. The decision was made. Sparta would send a force. But the full Spartan army could not march. The religious festival of Carneia was underway. To march in full force during Carneia was sacrilege. So Leonidas would take only his royal bodyguard, 300 men, Hippais, the elite. Each man chosen must have a living son. These were not conscripts, they were volunteers. Every Spartan warrior yearned for glory, for undying fame. To be chosen by Leonidas was the highest honor. They knew the mission. They understood the likely outcome. Death was not a stranger to a Spartan, it was a companion from birth. They were trained to face it, to embrace it if duty demanded. These 300 were the epitome of Spartan breeding, hardened by tested in ritual combat, bound by loyalty to each other and to their king. They prepared to leave. Spartan custom was stoic, laconic. They marched north, a tiny band against a tidal wave. Their destination was a narrow pass, Thermopylae, the Hot Gates, named for the hot sulfur springs that bubbled nearby. It was a place where geography offered a sliver of hope, a bottleneck. Here, the mountains plunged almost directly into the Malian Gulf. The path was tight, in places barely wide enough for a single wagon. Here, the vast numbers of the Persian army would count for less. Here, a small, determined force could hold back a multitude, at least for a time. This was the strategy, to delay Xerxes, to buy precious time for the rest of Greece to rally. Leonidas understood the terrain. He was a soldier. He saw its advantages. The narrowness of the pass would negate the Persian cavalry. It would force them to attack head-on, into the teeth of Spartan spears. The Phocians, local Greeks, had built a wall there years before. It was in disrepair. Leonidas ordered it rebuilt, strengthened. This wall would be their primary line of defense. Behind it, the Spartans and their allies would make their stand. Xerxes arrived. He saw the tiny Greek force arrayed against him. He scoffed. On the fifth day, Xerxes lost patience. His pride was stung. He ordered his Medes and Scythians to attack. The Persian host surged forward, expecting to sweep away the defenders. They crashed against the Spartan line. It was not a line of men. It was a wall of bronze shields, a hedge of iron spear points, the solid, unyielding. The Spartans stood shoulder to shoulder, shields interlocked. The fighting was brutal, savage. The narrow pass became a slaughterhouse. The Persians, lightly armed with wicker shields and short spears, could not break the Spartan formation. Their arrows fell harmlessly against the heavy bronze shields and helmets. Their numbers were a disadvantage in the constricted space. They tripped over their own dead. The Spartans fought with disciplined fury. Their long spears found their marks. When spears broke, they drew their swords. They fought in relays, the front rank falling back to rest, replaced by fresh warriors, methodical, relentless. Xerxes watched from his throne set up on a nearby hill. He saw his crack troops falter. He saw them cut down. He sent in his elite. The immortals, 10,000 strong, they too were broken. Hope began to flicker amongst the defenders. Perhaps the impossible was possible. But then a shadow fell upon their valor. A man named Ephialtes, a local from Trachis. He knew the mountains. He knew their secret paths. Driven by greed, or perhaps by fear, he sought out Xerxes. He offered to show the Persians a way, a hidden track that led around the mountains, a path that would allow them to bypass the hot gates, to encircle the Greek defenders, to attack them from the rear. Xerxes listened. This was the breakthrough he needed. He promised Ephialtes a great reward. The traitor led a contingent of Persian troops under the cover of darkness. They climbed the winding Thermopylae path. The Phocians, who were guarding this route, were taken by surprise. They were few in number. They put up a brief resistance, but were quickly overwhelmed or scattered. The way was now open. The Spartans and their allies were doomed. The trap was closing. News of the betrayal reached Leonidas. Scouts brought the grim tidings. The Persians were behind them. Encirclement was imminent. There was no escape. Leonidas called a council of war. The morning of the third day dawned, heavy, ominous. The Spartans knew this was their last sun. They ate their morning meal. Leonidas, it is said, told them, "Eat well, men, for tonight we dine in Hades." There was no despair, only a grim acceptance, a fierce pride. They had done their duty. They had held the pass. They had bought time for Greece. Now they would meet their end as Spartans should, fighting to the last man, to the last breath. The Persians attacked from both front and rear. The remaining Greeks, now hopelessly outnumbered, fought with the fury of lions cornered. They no longer fought from behind the wall. They advanced into the wider part of the pass, to meet the enemy, to inflict maximum casualties. Their spears shattered. They drew their swords. When their swords broke, they fought with their hands, their teeth. Leonidas was in the thick of it, a whirlwind of destruction. He fell finally, a king among his men, a hero's death. The battle was over. The battle was... The news of Thermopylae spread through Greece. It was news of a defeat, but it was also news of incredible heroism. The sacrifice of Leonidas and his men was not in vain. They had bought precious time. Time for the Greek fleet to prepare. Time for the other city-states to muster their forces. The stand at Thermopylae became a rallying cry. If so few could inflict such damage on the Persian behemoth, then what could a united Greece achieve? The defiance of the Spartans lit a fire in Hellenic hearts. The Persian army, though victorious, was bloodied and delayed. Xerxes pressed on. He sacked Athens. He burned the Acropolis, but the spirit of resistance, fanned by the flames of Thermopylae, was now too strong. The Greek fleet, under the guidance of Themistocles, lured the Persian navy into the narrow straits of Salamis. There, the heavier, more maneuverable Greek triremes smashed the Persian armada. A stunning victory. Xerxes, his fleet shattered, his supply lines threatened, retreated with a large part of his army back to Asia. Greece was free. The legacy of Leonidas and his 300 Spartans endures. It has echoed down through the centuries, across cultures, across continents. Their story is more than just history. It is a myth, a legend, a touchstone for courage in the face of impossible odds. They stand as a timeless example of self-sacrifice for a greater cause. For freedom, for one's people, for one's way of life. Their names are synonymous with unwavering bravery and the ultimate devotion to duty. They are the few who stood against the many. Their tale has inspired countless soldiers, leaders, and ordinary individuals. It teaches that even in defeat there can be victory, a moral victory, a spiritual victory. The Spartans at Thermopylae lost the battle, but they won immortality. They showed the world the power of the human spirit when pushed to its limits. They demonstrated that a stand based on principle, even if it leads to death, can change the course of history. Their example shamed the timid and emboldened the brave. It helped to forge a sense of Greek identity that transcended individual city-state loyalties. The story of the 300 is not just about martial prowess, it is about the choices men make when faced with existential threats. Leonidas chose defiance over submission. He chose honor over disgrace. He chose death over a life unlived by Spartan ideals. Their name indeed liveth forevermore.